In Catalonia, another day of suspense with the distinct feeling that time's running out on Spain's worst political crisis in 4 decades. Regional President Carles Puigdemont twice delaying what was widely thought would be the announcement of snap elections. Instead, the separatist leader putting the decision of how to respond in what could shape into a race between Barcelona's bid to declare independence and Madrid's to implement direct rule to his own regional parliament, the Spanish Senate, to ratify on Friday the first ever use of Article 155 of the Constitution. And so the question, who will shoot first, Madrid or Barcelona? How to get cooler heads to prevail in a crisis that came to a head with that banned October 1st independence referendum, and which has stayed at fever pitch ever since, amid reports of 11th hour back-channel talks. Is it really too late for mediation? More broadly, what's the impact of this crisis on the rest of Europe? Last weekend saw self-determination referendums in northern Italy, non-binding votes cast by critics as Venetia of Lombardia saying they didn't want to pay for Naples and Sicily, or Brexiteers who say they don't want to pay for Bulgaria and Romania, or those in Germany who don't want to share the burden on Eurozone finances. Is it every man for himself in today's Europe? Today in the France 24 debate, the Catalonia crisis comes to a head. With us from Barcelona, Ana Arque-Salsona, Catalonia spokesperson for the International Commission of European Citizens, an umbrella group for EU regional associations. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, my pleasure.
From Brussels, he's a former member of the European Parliament who split with Carles Puigdemont's party over independence. Catalan attorney Yossi Gardens, welcome back to the show.
Hello, good evening.
And here in the studio, Alexei Pula, co-founder of digital news magazine Le Monde Moderne, the modern world.
It is. Catalonia.
All right. The France 24 debate on Facebook and Twitter, the hashtag F24debate. Carles Puigdemont never used the word independence when he spoke earlier. Instead, Catalonia's regional president explaining he won't call snap regional elections, saying Madrid refuses to guarantee that in exchange it wouldn't trigger Article 155 of the Constitution. Luke Schrago has more.
Spain's political crisis rumbles on as the leader of Catalonia's government rules out one measure that might have forestalled Madrid's revoking the breakaway region's autonomy.
I was prepared to organize these elections if certain guarantees were given so that these elections could be held in normal conditions. These guarantees have not been given, and therefore I cannot organize parliamentary elections.
There'd been indications Madrid could have held off in voting Article 155 of its constitution had Carles Puigdemont dissolved the Catalan parliament. However, given mounting dissent and demands for a declaration of independence not just in the streets but within his own coalition, the option seems to have evaporated, leaving the central government on course to impose direct rule.
We have a duty, and this is because Article 155 is applied with the proposal that was raised the other day at the table of the Senate. This is the mechanism of work that we have at this moment, and we are going to continue in this way.
The move could come as soon as Friday and be in effect by the weekend, leaving Catalan politicians scrambling to decide how to handle Madrid's looming seizure of power.
Before we go to our panel, let's go to correspondent Sarah Morris in Madrid. Is Friday Judgment Day for Catalonia and Spain?
Well, we're certainly going to see 2 parallel decisions going on at Madrid in the Senate and in Catalonia, a vote potentially on that declaration of independence if the parliament in Catalonia decides that that is the way forward. So we'll definitely know a little bit more about what the 2 sides want. We've heard in the Senate from the government, we've heard from the socialists, we've heard from the Deputy Prime Minister, Soraya Sáenz de Santa Maria. She said that the Article 155 was necessary because she needed to rescue Catalonia from what was going on there, rescue all those Catalans that are against independence. And she said to Carles Puigdemont that he hasn't, despite all his best efforts, been able to convince people that the promised land, as she put it, would be delivered. And she goaded him a little bit by saying that despite his best efforts, no EU country and no sensible country had actually said they would recognise an independent Catalonia.
It's October 26th. That banned referendum happened on October 1st. Catalonia and Spain have kept us in suspense ever since, Sarah. Is there a chance we could see some sort of back-channel mediation? We've heard talk of talks.
There's been all sorts of ups and downs today on this roller coaster that is the Catalonia conflict. And earlier today, we were absolutely convinced that Carles Puigdemont had decided to call a regional election on the condition that Article 155 would be called off. And it looked as if the moves and the pieces on the chessboard were all in place, because the socialists tabled an amendment which the government, the Conservative government of Mariano Rajoy, looked amenable to accepting, which was if Puigdemont triggers a regional election himself, Article 155 would be paralysed, and that would be a way out of this situation. A real election, as the Catalan opposition has called for, where the votes and the censuses would be counted in the normal way. But now we're in no man's land once more. We do know that there's lots of pressures on Carles Puigdemont. He's got the pressures from that Izquierda Republicana, the left-wing pro-independence, plus the CUP that make up his majority. They want a declaration of independence as soon as possible. But there's a lot of pro-business conservative members of his own centre-right party that are saying all these businesses have pulled out of Catalonia, is looking very shaky. Who would recognise an independent Catalonia? Can we push forward with this? We risk losing the running of the autonomous region, and we risk having the Spanish government come as soon as Saturday to sack us and potentially press criminal charges against Carles Puigdemont and other members of the government.
Sarah Morris, many thanks for that update. Let's get the reaction now of our panel. In Yossi Gardens, let me begin with you. You heard Sarah mention there the people pulling at opposite ends inside of Catalonia, pressure from all sides on Carles Puigdemont. What's your prediction as to what's going to happen now inside of the Catalan parliament?
Well, I think that Mr. Puigdemont had an opportunity today to call for elections. It would have totally unblocked the situation. The Popular Party and the Socialist Party, the majorities in the Spanish Parliament, the Spanish Senate, gave him that opportunity, but he gave it up, among other things because he was scared of being called a traitor. He has promised so many things to the people that the moment he announced that he made call for elections, at that very moment there was a demonstration at the front door of his own office, of his own palace, attacking him as a traitor. It took them 10 minutes to start calling him a traitor just because he was calling, remember, elections. So he's supposed to be representing the people of Catalonia. He's supposed to be acting on behalf of the people of Catalonia. But the very fact of calling elections is considered a betrayal. Why? Because they do know that if elections are called, they will stop this pretension. This is not a conflict between Catalonia and Spain. It's very important to tell that to your listeners and to our viewers here. This is an intra-Catalan conflict. This is a minority controlling minority, of course very strong and very respectful. The voters are always respectful, but they are a minority. They are 46% of the electorate. They've never gone beyond that, who is trying to impose to the whole of Catalonia, and indeed to the rest of Spain, a change of the constitution, a change of the Statute of Autonomy, and to go for independent rule.
Yeah,
so
but if the regional parliament were to vote on independence, if the regional parliament were to vote on independence, what would be the outcome?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. In principle, if the majority of the regional parliament votes what they are supposed to be voting, there could be a declaration of independence. It can also happen strange things tomorrow. As you said, it's the day of reckoning, because it is true that even in the majority, there are at least 2 or 3 people, at least, who have said they don't want a declaration of independence, and they could abstain or they could vote against, because otherwise they will be criminally liable themselves, as it is in any other criminal code in most of our democracies. You know, if you attack the state in this way, you might be criminally liable yourself. So it might be that even that vote is not won. But anyway, we don't know if there is a declaration of independence, and then there will be a 155 implemented on Saturday, which will be a disgrace. It will be a disgrace, but a necessary disgrace to restore democracy and order and the rule of law in a place where it has disappeared for the last months. You're mentioning October the 1st. No, the rule of law disappeared in Barcelona at least on September the 6th, when this majority decided to impose laws without respecting any of the procedural rules to impose the laws, and they imposed the law of the referendum. And we don't have a real rule of law in Catalonia since then, and that's why the companies are leaving. Companies are not living out of independence. Companies are living out of anarchy. You know, banks and companies and investors, what they don't want is anarchy.
Anna Arque, let me bring in Anna Arque.
Almost 800 companies leaving.
Let me bring in Anna Arque Solsona. First of all, are you happy with the statement you heard from Carles Puigdemont?
Well, hello, good evening. I will be happy when tomorrow the Parliament and the absolute majority of members of the Parliament, which voted in favor of the law for the referendum of self-determination and the law of transitority, will vote to lift the suspension of the Declaration of Independence. Then I will be happy as the majority of Catalan people, because the funny thing is that it's all the time that I hear from the people that they don't want independence to say we are minority, but I just appeal to the logic of the audience. How can it be possible that if we are not a majority, how can we have the majority of the seats in the parliament, and how we can approve the laws? Obviously, we do have a majority. It's not a 46, it's a 48% of the votes. They went to the Coalition for Independence. And the trick of saying, oh, it's not the 50%, let's just remember that Rajoy, the actual Spanish government president, is ruling with the not arriving at 25% of the votes, or many other elections, for example, May or Merkel, they are ruling with it's not arriving to the 30%.
So there is that coalition, Anna. There is that coalition, and you're confident that if there is an up or down vote on yes for independence or against it, that the Catalan Parliament will approve independence.
Yes, tomorrow well, it can, well, I don't know if there's going to be a voting or it's going to be declared. We do have to bear in mind that the Declaration of Independence, it comes from a popular mandate, from a referendum that we held on the 1st of October, even though we suffered all the violence from the paramilitary police from the Spanish state. All the powers of the Spanish state are used to block what is a democratic exercise, because what it doesn't fit in any democrat mind is to think that self-determination or referendums are actual something against democracy. Democracy is not an entelechy. Democracy only exists when it's exercised. And that's what we did the 1st of October, even though the Spanish police hit all the families that we were there, are unarmed, just ready to cast our vote. And that's unacceptable. Today, for example, Federica Mogherini, the High Representative for the European Union in Exterior Affairs, was saying that the European Union is the force of the peace, is a project of peace. Well, if it's a project of peace, obviously what we cannot tolerate is any act of violence, state violence against the unarmed population. That's an outrageous, that's an intolerable, unacceptable.
Alexei Pula, your thoughts on the timeline of all of this? How you heard Yossi Gardens say that it was early September, that decision to stage the referendum, and how, well, we're now at October 26th.
Well, it's, I mean, there's been this referendum, and frankly, the question is, why don't you want it to be legal? Why don't you wait until you have a legal referendum being held and have the results, and then this is the rule of law, and then people are happy, they casted the vote, and you get the results. Here, what we see is not a region, but it's really Puigdemont and his party gone rogue for internal policy reasons, getting the media attention and trying to get a majority. That is true.
But they argue that Madrid would have never approved a referendum, or would have liked the referendum to be for the whole country.
Why the rush? Why do you need an independence now? Why Catalonia wants to be independent in 2017? There's a question here. Why the rush? Is the first question. Why the rush? Is it because of internal election? Is it to make sure not to lose the majority in the regional parliament? There's a lot of question there. And about Europe being a force for peace, I think it's been clear that what Europe has said, and most of European leaders have said, we talk to national governments and not regional governments. We respect regional governments, but above all, we talk to the national leaders and the national government, and we want the rule of law to be there. The question about democracy is a good one. And it's true that maybe the region is the right scale for a true democracy. But then you have to put the rules, and that's a big challenge for Europe in the future, is how they manage this independence, or at least regional democracy in the future, so that Europe is not seen as putting law where we're not wanted.
All right, I know Ana Arke-Solsona doesn't agree, but we'll get your reaction when we come back. We have to take a very quick break. You're watching the France 24 debate. Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate. Yes, we're on the eve of what might be kind of a judgment day for the Catalonia crisis, what with Spain's Senate to rule whether or not to ratify Article 155 of the Constitution, implementing direct rule in that region. This as Catalonia's parliament prepares to state its response, possibly declaring independence. With us from Barcelona, Ana Arke-Solsona, Catalonia spokesperson for the International Commission of European Citizens. Welcome back as well. To Catalan attorney Yossi Gardens, who is with us from Brussels and here in the studio. Alexei Pula, co-founder of digital news magazine The Modern World. Le Monde Moderne.
Yes.
I always think of the song by The Jam. Anyway,
of course.
Many thanks for being with us. Just before the break, Alexei was mentioning how, in effect, what's the problem on waiting for a referendum? Ana Arke-Solsona, I know what you're going to say, right? That that Madrid won't agree to a referendum solely for Catalonia, but only wants one for the entire nation. But couldn't snap regional elections, Ana, be a way to sort of have that vote once and for all?
Well, actually, I mean, it's a good question, because it can be answered with another question. Now, why not now? Reality is that what is going on now in Catalonia, it's not something new. It's something that comes from longer time generations. It comes from 300 years ago. And I know it's history, and I know that people may find it boring, but since the Spanish monarchy occupied the Catalan institutions, the Catalan dynamics changed. And from that moment is that the independentists, we exist. And we're going to continue existing. So why now is because it's not now. It's at the beginning of 20th century, before the Civil War.
This conversation, Ana, nearly went away until 2010, when Madrid refused
Am I part of this debate? Sorry. Is this working?
Yeah,
is this working or not?
Just
Sorry,
a minute.
I'm not sure if it's working.
Ana Arke-Solsona, in 2010 is when it came back to the head, though.
Yeah.
It's important to place it in the right place. It's not something new because one politician had a dream.
Right.
It's not about that. And why we cannot wait is because since all these previous years, we have been asking to the Spanish state 16 times to do a referendum in agreement, but they don't want to recognize Catalonia as a nation. And that's the bottom line. The bottom line is that in Catalonia we have a legal democratic parliament, that we approve laws, and the Spanish state says that they're illegal. We approve laws against the poverty, energetical poverty, and they say it's illegal. We approve laws
This is
for
not serious.
equality between women and men, and they say it's illegal.
Oh
we
my
cannot
God.
have a parliament that we have legislative power, but then we cannot apply the laws that we approve. It's nonsense. So Catalan, for many reasons,
this is
now
becoming
that we are in
interesting.
democracy, excuse me, can I finish? Now that we are in democracy, now that we can talk about self-determination and independence without the Spanish state or the regimes to come and well, I was going to say and jail us, but yes, actually they come and jail us. We at the moment, we have 2 Catalans in jail just because they are the leading of grassroots movements that they organize peaceful
Is this a debate, or is this an act of propaganda?
Yossi Gardens,
What is
Yossi
exactly
Gardens.
the point?
It's
is
just
this
crazy.
No, I mean, I was invited to a debate. I'm very happy France 24 wants to give an act of propaganda. You know, there's a rule for journalism, which is facts are sacred, comments are free.
You should be
And
more
what you're
polite
listening
with
here
the
is something
program.
that any fact checking, no. Yeah, well, I'm very polite with the program. Now, listen, please. I mean,
Well, you're not.
facts
You have
are
been
sacred,
speaking a
comments are
lot
free
of time
should
at
be
the
ruled.
beginning.
Please,
For
one
France
at a
24.
time.
So, one at a time. Thank you. So, if you had any fact checker, which is good for a channel like you know, you can do once you cut us off, you could check first that Catalonia is the most self-determined region in Europe. There is no other region in Europe,
we can
and not
see
in the
that.
Western world,
We
with
cannot
stronger
vote.
powers than Catalonia. So, well, is this a dialogue? Sorry, can I speak, please?
Please, one at a time.
Then
Yossi Gardens.
there is a majority. So it is a. Yeah, but can I end the sentence, please? Okay, so this is a fact that you can check, that you can go. Then you can check the results of all the elections and you can see the majorities. All what you've heard is a bunch of propaganda. The Parliament of Catalonia is the most sovereign parliament in Europe. It's first. Second, there is a majority, of course there is a majority of members of the Catalan Parliament, which represent altogether 48% of the Catalan people. And this happens in any parliament when you have a system which is called the didnt rule, you know, which is very technical to explain here, but some of your listeners understand, which compensates, which makes, for example, that the votes in Barcelona count less than the votes in northern Catalonia. It is okay,
like in Spain.
but it is okay to
Like in
approve
Spain.
laws. This is exactly whatever. Like in many parliaments, you know. But what is not that majority does not allow to change the rules of the game. The rules of the game are never changed by 46% of the votes. The rules of the game, even the Catalan Statute of Autonomy imposes that the rules of the game can only be changed by 2/3. But the Catalan independentist group, who has never been in majority until now, so all these appellations to 300 years are fake, which can be checked in history books. There was never a call for independence as a majority. There was always a minority, yes, for 100 years. But now it is a majority in parliament, and they are trying to impose over the majority of Catalans, and yes, over Spain, something by a 48% of the votes. Those are the facts, you know. Then, of course, does it mean that the Spanish constitution is perfect? No. It needs to be changed? Yes. It is obsolete? Yes. But, you know, democracy lives in rules. And you have that in France. You have that in any country. The Article 155, and I advise any reader, I would advise any listener to check, is a literally copy, is a Spanish translation of Article 37 of the German Constitution, word by word. So you take Article 155 and you check Article 37 of the German Constitution, and they are the same text. Why? Because any federal state, from Italy, from Portugal with its regions, from Switzerland, who has also this article, has an article which says that the federal power, at a certain point, when the federation is in danger, has the right to impose the rule. What is the difference? The difference is that thanks God, in Germany, in Italy, in Portugal, in Switzerland, in all those, in Austria, where they have exactly the same article, never a democratic elected politician decided to take the law on himself and to decide that he doesn't like the constitution, he doesn't like the judges, he doesn't like the majority of his own population, and because he's invested.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that in Yossi Gardens.
Listen,
that is.
Let's talk about that.
Go ahead. You know.
Let's talk about what's going to happen next, because you bring up Article 155. First of all, a lot of reactions, I should say, on both sides of this argument on the hashtag F24 debate. Arthur saying, repressed, you must be kidding me. Catalonia is one of the richest and second with most autonomy after the Basque Country in Spain. Now, about Article 155, what it will entail. When he addressed Parliament on Wednesday, Spain's Prime Minister made it clear that under direct rule, he would be the one to trigger those snap regional elections. Let's listen to Mariano Rajoy.
We basically need to do two things. Re-establish legality, and that's why we triggered Article 155 of the Constitution, and under that return to the law, there will be regional elections within 6 months. That's what the Socialist Party and I would like, for elections to be held as soon as possible, and of course with all the guarantees and according to law, avoiding a regrettable situation such as the recent referendum.
You know, I listened to the Spanish Prime Minister and I wonder how Alexei Pula is he going to implement that? How is he going to organize that vote?
He can't. I mean, the 155, they've already been called to civil servants to be loyal and help implementing it. It's not going to work. I mean, even if you want to do it, you're not going to send the cops, take back the Catalan TV and the school teacher and everything. It's very difficult. My question is, why is Rajoy is so stupid that he didn't actually sign and said, have a legal referendum and then we'll see the results? That would have been the easiest way out of this crisis, because I'm sure the vote wouldn't have been
to me, why doesn't France have that with Corsica?
Yeah, well, because Rajoy is stupid. I think he should have done it before. Can I talk?
Why doesn't have? I mean, why are you asking another? Yeah, but why doesn't France have that? Why are you asking another country to do something?
I'm not asking. I'm just saying. I'm just asking a question to myself. And nobody, no European leader actually said what to do. And they say it's a Spanish crisis. And you look, it's a Spanish mess now. It's not even a crisis. So at one point, Rajoy should be less stupid and say, okay, run the referendum, it's legal, and we'll see the results. And that's it. And it's end of the story. Right now, this is a Netflix series that we have, seeing unfolding now.
Go to Corsica. Give Corsica independence.
Well, Corsica said last week that they will envisage this in 10 years' time. So there is a timing issue here. Why the rush is the first question. Then why Rajoy is not saying, let's have a legal referendum and see the results.
So it does not depend on the Corsicans.
And then, not now, but
so timing is not decided by the
timing is key, of course. The rush here is the mess we're in, and it's not about 300 years. It's only a month, and look at where we are now. And it's just that every day there is some suspense, and we're waiting for Puigdemont to say something or not.
You know, it's so simple to speak from a studio. Yeah, it's simple to speak from a studio as this was an academic problem. You're talking about the rights of people. You know,
if everybody talks over one another, the viewers won't hear anything. So let's have one at a time, please. Let me begin. Let me begin with you, in Yossi Gardens. A lot of our in Yossi Gardens, and then I promise to go to you, Anna. I promise. In Yossi, a lot of viewers, especially in countries like Quebec, in places like Quebec, in places like Scotland, they've had their referendums. The central government allowed them to be. Alexei is asking the question: why didn't Madrid just let the Catalans have a referendum?
Well, first, the situation in each country is completely different. It's the same reason why France will not have a referendum, why Germany will not have a referendum in Bayern. The Scottish case is completely different.
Spain will not?
The Quebec case is based... I'm talking now, please. The Quebec... You will debate afterwards. The Quebec case is based on something which is called the law of clarity, which if imposed to Catalonia, the first thing it would require... It's a huge majority that they don't even have for a second. So the law of clarity, they reject it. I don't discuss that there could be a day through some kind of law of clarity which imposes a large majority all along several years, it could happen. Now, what I'm saying is that what Spain is doing is what any other member state does. And let me finish with just a sentence. It's great to make allegations to history and historical rights and everything kind. In democracy today, rights are decided by the votes of people. And these guys have 48% of the votes, which is not a majority to change
That's
the rules.
why we have a majority.
With 48,
that's
you
why
don't change.
a
You don't change the
referendum,
country with
we
48.
won the referendum.
48 is not the
Okay.
majority, my friend.
Anna Arke-Sonsona, what happens?
and-
Anna Arke-Sonsona, what happens now
Okay.
with Article 155?
Okay, well, first of all, and excuse me, but first of all, I mean, facts, they need to be certain. The act of clarity was made after the referendum in Quebec, Senor Gardens. That's first thing. Second thing, 48% of the votes in Catalonia. Rajoy is ruling with 22% of the votes. Just saying that. Third,
He's
what
not
we have
changing
to
the
bear
rules
in
of the
mind
game.
is that
Don't change the rules of the game. No, but you cannot lie.
Yes.
Please, what?
Wait, am I speaking now?
Rules of the
Please,
game.
Anna
with the majority.
Arke-Sonsona, please.
Rules need another
Okay.
majority.
Yossi Gardens, please, let Anna speak.
Okay, and of course he's changing them because
It's different majorities to
he's
change the rules
dealing-
and to legislate.
Iñaki, please let
That's
Anna
the
speak.
Spanish attitude. I mean, yes, he's changing them because at the moment in the European Union there are all these agreements in which the Spanish state is giving the sovereignty, which is fine or which is not. I'm not saying that. But of course, he's taking important decisions only with the vote of the 22% of the electorate. So, of course, he's taking important decisions. Why are you saying that in the governments, governments don't take important decisions? Third,
the Catalan, that is a fake fact. I live in Brussels.
One at a time.
Sorry.
Iñaki Gardens, please let Anna speak.
That is a lie.
Above the 155.
Okay, sorry.
Well, I'm not a liar. I'm not a liar. You can lie as much as you want, but don't call me a liar.
Misinformed.
The article
You are misinformed. Sorry, misinformed.
No, like you with the clarity law, misinformed. Read a little bit more. The article 155 is an article like all the articles in all the constitutions in democratic states, which are, of course, subject to an international law. What it means is that universal rights are there for a reason. And the Spanish Constitution, of course, the Spanish Constitution meets with all the requirements of international law because the Spanish Constitution signed all the international treaties that says to respect and promote self-determination of people, which can be a state, a colony, or people, a nation. Of course, that is how it is. In Helsinki in 1975, the Spanish state was also there in the Conference of Security of Europe, and they signed as well, not only that people has the right to self-determination, but the obligation of states to defend that and promote it. If not, it's a grievance against international diplomacy.
Let me turn to Alexei Pula on this. Alexei, what impact is this having now on the rest of Europe? Because as we're hearing from our panelists in Barcelona and Brussels, this is not going to be solved Friday. It's not going to be solved next week. It's going to take a long time. As it drags on, what impact is it having on the rest of the continent?
Well, for once, it's very bad for Europe as a whole, because when you see a country in such a difficult situation, and Europe is clear, it won't be the middleman. It is a country issue, but yet it's a European country and one of the biggest, and it's important that others are actually getting in the game and helping. The only thing that we can see is the more you destroy cohesion, the more you destroy diversity in unity, the more Putin will be happy and the less Europe will have power on the international scene. Clearly here, this independence movement, if we see it in France, like we talk about Corsica, but in Italy, of course, the Brexit plus Scotland and all this, what happens if you have a continent of small regions? Where is the security? Where is the army? Where is the economy? Where is the big strategy? Where is the voice on the international stage? That's the question to ask. And say, why independence is a growl. Why do you want this? What is there not enough freedom in Catalonia right now? Is there journalists being imprisoned? Is it like in China or a country where actually the rule of law is coercive? I think not. I think Catalonia lives under democratic laws, the Spanish laws, the European laws. There is the Declaration of Human Rights. There is, of course,
Okay, but then why? Because
people.
why did 45% of the Scots vote for independence?
Well, I think there's this belief that you don't want to pay for the neighbors. You don't like the neighbors for historical reason. That's key.
that.
Of course, that's the fact. You don't like your neighbors in Europe. It's a fact. We try to love each other, but it doesn't work. And then you want your money. You want to keep your money, and you want to run your own business. Providing that Europe will be the big guy helping you when the other big guy comes to you, which is what Europe said. We won't be the middleman, and we won't be protecting as long as we don't have this strategy for the regions. And I think the question here we have is not just a Spanish question or regional question, it's a European question, is do we want Europe to be an aggregation of regions, strong regions, and is it something that could be the future? Nations, different size, small size nation, living one together, but you'll have to reinvent cooperation, you'll have to reinvent tax, you'll have to reinvent everything. How long is it going to take? And why is it not that we can work together with what we have and build on this?
And the president of the European Commission saying he doesn't want to see Europe become a body represented by 95 different countries. Those were his words.
Yeah.
I think the biggest threat is nationalism. There's an urgent need to do everything possible so that Europe has power. Nationalism is a poison that prevents Europe from acting together to play an important role in world issues. Europe has no role to play in the conflict between Barcelona and Madrid. The Spaniards have to solve this problem. I wouldn't want Europe to be composed of 95 different countries in the future. We're going to lose control.
Anna Arke-Solsona, your reaction?
Yeah, well, it's not up to one person to decide what the people, the Europeans, the citizens are, because the European Union always says, oh, we need to make the roots of citizenship participation. Okay, so let's listen to the citizenship. And so it's down to the people, to the nations to decide that. But with what the other panelist was commenting, I don't agree with many of the things he says, but I agree first on the tone in which he explains, and I agree with some of the final points he was making, because the point is that at the moment we live in a global economy. So obviously, all what we're saying, the historical nations, all what we're saying is, of course, we're not going to be isolated, because basically we have seen this with Greece and with other countries. Corporate democracy don't allow for suddenly 7.5 million European citizens to be outside and banned and expelled and punished just because they wanted to vote. That's crazy. That is not going to happen. But what about if nations and the people can decide actually to be or not with the state or the other state? The point is that not because of convenience you can impose from the state what is how we have to live. And because at the end of the day, it is not quite right. It's not about money. Actually, we have been all the time explaining that the Catalan independence, we are quite happy to arrive to an arrangement in which we keep paying to the Spanish state because we don't want the Spanish state to go bankrupt. We don't have anything against Spain as per se. We just have all in favor of Catalonia and the fact that we want to rule our own country and progress with our own way of seeing things and understanding politics, which is different to which the Spanish do. But that doesn't mean that we go anywhere.
Okay, Solsona, I'm going to have to interrupt you because unfortunately we're out of time. We're out of time. The argument is not over, neither is the crisis. I want to thank you for joining us from Barcelona. I want to thank Yossi Gardens for being with us from Brussels. Apologies, the clock has caught up with us. I want to thank as well Alexei Pula. Stay with us. Media Watch is next. And we say hello to Sanam Chantier.
Hello.
As you can hear, a civil and understated affair is that the Catalan crisis. What is striking is that neither side is blinking, as we've just heard.
Absolutely not. And there are many articles. This has been covered intensely. One that grabbed my attention was by the New York Times, which not only addresses how divisive this has been, as we just saw in that debate in the country, but also how much has affected the different media outlets, some of whom have very much transparently taken sides. Now, one here, as you can see in this picture, we have the image of a journalist who's generated a lot of buzz. She's the blonde one on the left. Her name is Mónica Terribas, who has been accused of leading Catalonia towards independence. Now, earlier, her employer, which is Catalonia Radio, tweeted this quote from her saying, "President, we're waiting for you," with subtle echoes of, "We're relying on you, we depend on you." And this was ahead of that speech by Carles Puigdemont. But François, we know now that the central government in Madrid may soon try and align these narratives by the media outlets by actually taking over the Catalan public broadcasters. And of course, there's been a reaction, a very strong reaction to that, with some of those representatives from TV3, from Catalonia Radio, responding to this, saying, and of course, we have her again there, Mónica Terribas, at the center of all this, taking control of their media is a direct attack on Catalans, and it violates the fundamental principles of the European Union. Now, another article that came to my attention is this one by La Libération, which is a story about Catalans across the border here in France, in the southern town of Perpignan.
Yeah, because we have French Catalans.
Absolutely, who are preparing. Many people don't know that. Of course, this was a part of Catalonia until the latter half of the 17th century, and they're saying, we're preparing to come and help you. And there's a quote in this article, François, which is very telling, which says, this is from a Perpignan resident saying, "We are one and we are the same people."
And of course, the divisions that are running close there to the French border playing out as well on social media.
Social media has been incredible today. We had one tweet, which is somewhat premature. This one from a broadcaster there, and this is just ahead of the announcement by Puigdemont, saying that people were taken to the streets because they were afraid that he would actually call for a snap election, which he didn't do, calling him a traitor and a fraud, and that would have been a U-turn in his policies. That wasn't the only image that we saw of someone jumping the gun. The other one, and this is very interesting, is the former leader of the CUP, the pro-independence party, of course, Antonio Baños, who even changed his Twitter photo there to show Puigdemont hanging upside down in show of protest. But after the address, oh my God, there's been so much toing and throwing here, he decided to forgive the Catalan leader and put his photo the right way up with this tweet. It says, "Y perdo, I lose, I'm backing down here," because obviously Puigdemont didn't call for that snap election. And of course, as I said, this is very much representative of what's going on in the country, the to's and fro's and no real conclusion in sight. Now, one user here is commenting on the confusion, saying, "I have doubts over the Catalan situation, so where are we? Even they don't know where we're at. This is a joke." And this one, I really like this one because this is for us journalists. Ser periodista en España hoy. To be a journalist in Spain today, this roller coaster ride where none of us know where we're at. But of course...
Or going through hoops.
We are going through hoops, aren't we? And lastly, we know that the day in Barcelona was also marked by university student protests. And here, this is a picture saying we want them home. These are the two Catalan representatives who were detained. It's Libertad Jordi, to free the two Jordis, the two Catalan representatives.
We're out of time. Finish on a cartoon, please.
I'll give you one cartoon here that we have time for, again representing the confusion that they're facing. It's not this one, it's the next one, I'll go to it. This is my favorite. You see on the one side they're saying, "Where are we going?" The response is, "We do not ask the ones in the front." The other side saying, "Where are we going? We do not ask the ones who are getting angry."
All right.
Nobody knows what's going on.
Brexit.
And there's more to come. Many thanks, Sanam Shanti. I want to thank our panelists once again. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.